Hello, welcome back here. So after all my operation system running perfectly, I have my Raspberry Pi here. This is my MacBook and I'm using a monitor for it. So this is my MacBook and this is my Windows system. So now my next step will be to find a way to know how to get the IP address from my Mac and to get the IP address from my Raspberry Pi, also to get the IP address from my Windows. So after figured out all these IP addresses, now I want to make sure that all my devices, they can communicate with each other. So they're all in the same network. I created a separate network from my main network, which is going to be Sheriff's Home Lab network. So all these operation system, they connected through that network via Ethernet cable. So I have Ethernet cable for my Mac, Ethernet cable for my Raspberry Pi, and Ethernet cable for my Windows. So now I will walk you guys through the process how to get the IP addresses, and after getting the IP addresses, I will walk you through how to make sure that all these devices, they can communicate with each other. So stay tuned for that. All right, now we are here on my Windows command line. So if you want to get your IP address, you want to type ipconfig, and when you type your ipconfig, you gotta look under IPv4. That's where you're gonna find your IP address, and the steps are shown here exactly how to open the command line. And now that we have our IP address, now let's move on into my Mac. My MacBook also is the same thing. You have to open the terminal, and after opening the terminal, you want to type ifconfig and you hit enter. So after you type ifconfig, hit enter, that will give you also your IP address. But also it depends on what kind of connectivity you're using, either Ethernet cable or either by Wi-Fi. So now I'm using Ethernet cable, so my IP address is displayed here. So now I have two IP address that I need, which is from my MacBook and from my Windows. So that's it. That's all we need from here. So now let's move on into my Raspberry Pi also, because I'm running three different operation system. So on my Raspberry Pi, you open the terminal and you type ifconfig and hit enter. Also, you will see the IP addresses display, under the IPv4. So now we have all our IP addresses that we need. So basically that's how you find your IP address in different operation system. Now that we already checked our IP addresses and we know how to get our IP addresses, now let's go ahead and check if all our devices can communicate between them. So that's going to be our next step. Let's get it. All right, now here we are on my Mac operation system. So once you go to the terminal, you want to double check, make sure that the Mac can communicate correctly with the Windows. So to be able to see if they can communicate together, you're going to type ping and then the IP address of the Windows. We already know all the IP addresses, right? So you want to type the IP addresses of the Windows system here. So when you type it, now you can see it's showing that our Mac can can communicate with my Windows system. So let's do the same thing also. We're gonna go ahead and type ping and then put the IP address of the Raspberry Pi. So it should also display the showing like the Raspberry Pi also can communicate with the Mac. But to be able to do this process, you want to make sure that all the devices are connected in the same network. If they connect in the different network, you won't able to, it's gonna fail. You know what I mean? So if it fail, you just make sure that they all connected in the same network. So here also I already checked my Raspberry Pi and I can see they also can communicate perfectly. So that's successful right there. So now we are here on my Raspberry Pi and we're gonna do the same thing again. We want to take the IP address of our Mac, type it here. So the same process, you type ping and then type the IP address and it will show you exactly if they can communicate or not. And most likely if they are in the same network, they should be able to communicate perfect without any problem. So as you can see here, it is displaying that my Raspberry Pi can communicate with my Windows system, and then it's coming, and now it's done. Let's go ahead and then check if the Raspberry Pi can communicate with my MacBook.
And like I mentioned earlier, you always want to make sure that they all are on the like they are in the same network. If they are not in the if they are in a different network, it's gonna cause problem, it's gonna fail, because it happened to me, and it took me a long time before I figured out exactly why they not communicating properly. But here, so next step will be to write ping and then type the IP address of the MacBook, and it should also display that they can communicate correctly. So let's see what's gonna. There you go. Now we got it. So they communicate well. So now we have our Mac communicate perfectly with our Windows, and also communicate with our Raspberry Pi. So here we are on the Windows, and we want to check the same thing. Also, it's the same process. Type ping, and then type the IP address of the operation system that you want to check, either the Mac or either the Raspberry Pi. And when you type it, if everything works perfect, it should display successfully that you already you can communicate. These two operation system can communicate. And after typing here, you see, so now we have these two operation system communicate perfectly. So now let's move on to the next one. So you write ping, you type in ping, and then add the IP address of the computer, like the computer do you want to check if they can talk to each other. So after successfully checking all my operation system, I find out that they all can communicate between them. So that was something very interesting and very important to know how to do it. And I would learn it, I just learned by doing it. So I was looking around and I found exactly how to do it.
Thank you guys. So that was our tutorial today, and I learned something new. Those lessons would be very valuable on like what we do. It's very important to understand how to check IP addresses and how to check, make sure that all your devices that are in the same network can communicate between them. So that's what we learned today, and I hope you guys learned something from this video. And I'm gonna see you guys into the next one.